Hi. Okay, so this will be my bone marrow. I'm going to do strict permissibility. Is it permissible for monetized compensation for the donation of bone marrow? Okay, time. Okay. We, the UCSC Ethics Team, believe that monetized compensation for donation of bone marrow is absolutely ethically permissible. Now, I'd like to introduce my argument by starting with imagine a scenario. Imagine you're walking down the street and you come across a dying child, and you have all the potential to save this child without any inconvenience to yourself. Now ask yourself, do you save the child or do you keep on walking? Most of us would like to say that we would save the child, given that we have the full potential and wouldn't come at any inconvenience to ourselves. However, before I can say that we can all say this, I really have to paint another picture for you. Every day, there are about 6,000 people in the United States alone who are dying from a need of bone marrow. And I'd say right now, you are able to give bone marrow. And at what convenience or inconvenience to you? I think that question is better answered when we look into new medical technology that's now completely readily available, especially in this country. This is called peripheral blood stem cell collection. Basically, this is a process in which the donator or the donor takes some added stem cell capsules for about a couple days so that they have extra stem cells for collection in their blood. This brings no harm to the donor. Now, the donor, after 5 days of this dietary supplement, they give blood, in which the blood is then sorted for these stem cells, and then the blood that they gave is actually returned into their body, however, with less stem cells. But given the additional amount of stem cells that they're taking 5 days in advance for this, there's actually no harm done. Now, there's no really need to imagine 6,000 people dying out there every day. Our ability to use peripheral blood stem cell collection, because there was a very popular case just recent. Matthew Welling was 1 year old, dying infant child from such a disease that was completely cured or curable or treatable through basically bone marrow donation. Now, Steve Carras spent 1 day in the hospital basically giving nothing more than his time and gave Matthew Welling his life. Now, if we all have the potential to save these people at very little inconvenience to ourselves, but we all consider ourselves to save the dying child in front of us when we have the potential and it doesn't present any inconvenience to us, there has to be. There's nothing different, so there must be something different. If these two situations are truly the same, and yet we don't help these people in need of bone marrow, then what's going on here? Now, Peter Singer, a great modern ethicist and philosopher, did a look into effective altruism and why people don't donate. Now, he said the four main reasons what prevents people from being charitable or from giving donations of any kind is a lack of faith in oneself, fear of to have any such effect, fear of dedicating one's life in order to have any sort of significant effect on the world, lack of trust in bureaucratic charities using your money ineffectively, and also just the general fear of the burden of giving. Now, basically, we can take all four of these uh, reasons and boil them down to a mere lack of incentive. Now, the point of this is to not make seem charity unreasonable, but this is to make us understand better those who abstain from charity, especially those ages 18 to 40. People within the age group of 18 to 40 arguably have the most to lose by donating their time and resources. For they're the most vulnerable, they're most critical, but these people are either in college, going through college, have lots of college debt, they are starting a family, they're starting their careers, they arguably have the least amount of time and resources, or the most precious of these to give. What's really essentially tragic about this is the fact that people ages 18 to 40 are actually the most ideal bone marrow candidates. So, basically, the most effective group is being rendered ineffective by lack of incentive. If we can somehow give this group incentive, or if we can make our add incentive to charity, we're going to see the most utility possible gained. Okay, so monetized compensation essentially solves the underlying problem for why people don't donate. And frankly, the only harm that this could possibly produce, monetized compensation, comes from a lack of regulation, but it doesn't come from the compensation itself. Now, we cannot say that just because if it were unregulated, it would be bad, and if it's possible to be bad, then we can't have it. When we have to prevent future black markets, of course. Well, no, that's not the case at all. I mean, this is essentially no different than blood donations. And frankly, blood is a life-saving substance that we are in critical need on a greater scale than bone marrow. So what we do is we figure out ways that makes it easier for people to donate. We give them incentive. We give them stickers, we give them cookies, we give them juice, we give them pins, we give them buttons, we give them mugs, we give them special little prizes to make them feel good that actually cost money, that save them money. We're compensating them already through some sort of monetary sense, but the fact of the matter is when we do this, more people go. When we have blood donations in works, in schools, that offer people some sort of compensation, the numbers go up, and when the numbers go up, more lives are saved, more utility is gained. Now, where does the harm come from giving blood donors cookies? Nothing. Nowhere. It's regulated, it's safe, no one is going out of their way to hurt themselves in order for this to get this cookie. And I think likewise, as long as we regulate the way that we compensate people monetarily, we're not going to have any sort of harm. People are not going to be tailoring their history. They're not going to be giving more bone marrow than they're able to give. They're not going to be giving other organs. Bone marrow is a regenerable substance. We cannot completely deprive ourselves of this. This is not a kidney or a lung. This is not an irreversible procedure. Okay, now moving on. What does paying for bone marrow actually mean? Now, we want to recite this back to the original case, checking for time. Okay, and we want to recite this back to the original case. Doreen Flynn, challenging the Donor Act, the Organ Donor Act, excuse me. Now, basically, she's saying this is not to say that she wants total freedom for any individual to sell any organ that they want to anyone they want in any way. She's simply saying that we want it legal for people to be compensated for the time that it takes to donate. In order to donate peripheral blood stem cell collection or via this matter, you have to spend about 40 hours over 2 weeks just in doctor's visits alone, and that on top of that's gas, transportation, and then loss of time work. Then there's the entire Saturday that you spend in the hospital, or excuse me, not Saturday, the entire day that you spend in the hospital donating. That's more time in which you could be working and could be making money. And if your age is 18 to 40 and you're in considerable amount of debt and you have a new family in which you need to provide for, then giving to someone else who has no effect on your life is simply not going to happen, and these people are going to die. Now, the slippery slope in the black market arguments are the reason for the Open Donor Act, in which Dorian Flynn was challenging. However, again, this goes back to legal issues regarding regulation. When there's no regulation, sure, we can do whatever we want and we can create a lot of problems. But now I want to talk about medicine. Medicine is a life-saving substance in which is valued and people buy from other people. Now, rich people, we are afraid that rich people, or extremely affluent people, can go to poor people and say, "Give me your organs, I have a lot of money." And in exchange, this money dissolutes people into giving away their life-saving substances for a short-term benefit that doesn't equate the long-term loss. We can already have this right now. Medicine is a life-saving substance in which rich people could go to poor people and buy from, or anyone can buy from. But because we have that, we don't prohibit the sale of medicine to prevent this. No, we just regulate the sale of medicine, because otherwise it would be asinine to prevent a method that gets life-saving substances into more hands than fewer. Okay, now the counter to this might be lying donors, people tailoring their medical history, whatnot, and becoming donor gluttons and getting a tainted amount of bone marrow into our system, which would actually create more harm than positive utility. However, I can safely say that even if this were the case and we had no way to detect it, that arguably there would still be much, much more good, usable bone marrow that goes into the system than bad as a result of adding incentive. However, we don't even need to have more positive utility gained from this, because frankly, we're not even going to have this issue. This is something for science to differentiate. This is something medical histories, medical records. This is why we have paperwork, this is why we have systems, and this is why we have a science that can check for tainted bone marrow. So now we find that that monetized compensation only results in sort of a positive utility or gaining utility and not a loss of utility. And now if we really want to look into this more so, to think about it, to turn it into a more realistic setting or scenario, how about you look into, if you disagree with me, how about you look into that 1-year-old, 2-year-old dying Matthew Welling's face. Look into his eyes as he's in the hospital with his 2 parents comforting him in possibly their child's last moments on earth. And you tell me, or you tell him, and you look into his eyes and you say that you're going to deny him of bone marrow, or a better chance of getting life-saving bone marrow, because his life is not as important as preventing future possible black markets. Thank you.